It's Halloween and Michael Myers has returned home to Trick or Treat. This is your brand new look at the Trick or Treat Studios Halloween 1/6 scale Michael Myers figure. From the 1978 horror classic Halloween, Trick or Treat Studios are proud to present the official 1/6 scale Michael Myers figure. This amazing Michael Myers figure stands 12 inches tall and has 16 points of articulation. Michael is fully clothed in screen-accurate costume with working zipper. To round things out, the figure comes in a beautiful collector's box with flip-back window display. When news first broke the internet that Trick or Treat Studios was going to be tackling Michael Myers 6-scale figures from all the various Halloween sequels, let me tell you, I got pretty excited, especially when we saw images of those figures popping up online. We have gotten images of 78 Myers, Part 4, Part 5, and the 2018 Myers, and I hope somewhere in there we're going to get the sprinklings of the other one. But I can tell you, though, I was pretty excited, and when the pre-order was put in for this guy, he easily became the most anticipated figure of the entire year for me. And just how does this figure stack up? We'll get to that in a second. Before we do that, though, the figure stands 12.4 inches in height, about 12.5 inches tall. And switching that to centimeters, 78 Myers stands 31.6, or 31, almost 31.5 centimeters tall. As it goes for the figure's accessories, sadly he doesn't come with much. He doesn't come with a display stand, nor does he come with scene-specific accessories. But I gotta wonder if Trick or Treat perhaps doesn't want to first see what interest could be garnered in this line before packing these figures with a whole bunch of extra accessories. One thing I certainly think that they could do as a company is if there is a lot of interest in this line and people are buying these up, by all means, release a 78 Myers accessories set that comes with things like Judith Myers' tombstone, Bob's sheet with glasses, the telephone, for example, a pumpkin, or a display stand. It would be certainly a great fries with your meal add-on accessory that most definitely Trick or Treat could venture into doing as later add-ons to their figures. But let's have a look at the things that come included with the 78 Myers right now as you get them out of the packaging. The first one being included, of course, is his knife. Myers couldn't do much slaying and killing on Halloween night if he didn't have his trusty knife, and as you can see, they give him one of a large variety. It's done in plastic, so you will want to still be careful with it. The detail touches that I do like is that they did sandwich the blade of the metal in between two halves of wood, or at least the next best thing, the plastic that you can see right here. Nice riveted points that they put in there as well. They did add a wood grain to the handle, and they did add some additional brush strokes to the blade, just to add a little bit of extra pizzazz. But it is, yes, like I said, done in plastic, so you will want to be careful putting this into Michael Myers' hand. Speaking of his hands, he does come with one gripping hand, suitable for holding the knife. You could, of course, have it wielded this way, but I, for myself at least, when it comes to displaying Michael Myers, prefer the knife to be upside down. That makes for better work of stabbing and entering into somebody's skull. Now, the thing about the hand is, if you look at the opening that they've given it, it works really much better to have the handle on the top like that. However, though, if you are like me, you like to prefer to have your handle on the bottom, you have to fit it in there, and when you are putting it in there, it is awfully tight quarters. I don't know if you can tell or not, but it is a bit of a tight fit to get it into his hand. The positive, at least, is that the knife isn't going to be going anywhere. Sometimes when you do get hands that hold accessories, they barely do that, and a lot of times the accessories slip out from their grips. It's definitely not going to be happening here with the hand that comes included with Michael. But when you do get this out of his hand, I find it's easy just to get your thumb and push the top down. I suppose that could work the opposite way around as well, and then sort of just wiggle it back and forth. just like that. Like I said, it does fit in there. It's a little on the tight side, but I would much rather a tight quarters when it comes to holding the accessories than loose accessories that would be completely falling out of his hand. And I'm glad that's not the case here. But I do think it would be a great idea, though, if Trick or Treat down the road releases accessory sets and accessory packs for these figures. I mean, after all, if you are collecting these Michael Myers, why not down the road release a pack that has a jack-o'-lantern? Well, all the things I had said before. Barbie has additional wardrobe that you can buy and dress her up as. Why not have the idea of Michael Myers figures having accessory packs released down the road? Just as an idea. Now, of course, you guys are all here to see what the figure's head sculpt looks like. When we saw image surface online initially of what these figures look like, they looked really good in studios and they looked really good at conventions. But how do they physically look in hand? We did see some early looks at this figure, and I feel like it didn't do the proper justice to him. In some cases, it was too bright of a light that it showed some imperfections to his face. But the problem with Michael Myers, though, is that you don't want direct light shining on his face. You really want to be able to benefit from having the shadows fall where they naturally do on his mask. That being said, let's have a closer look at the figure. We'll just pick him up right here. And let's have a look at the head sculpt. Now, the head sculpt, I feel, is stellar on this guy. I was really caught off guard getting this guy out of the packaging, just how good the head sculpt actually did look. And I knew it was in good hands, giving it to Trick or Treat to helm the license. But of course, seeing some early images online, I think one of the problems was that they were shining really bright lights against his face. And that was what was causing his eyes, for example, to seem much more visible than what they're looking at right now. I mean, this is just basically studio light, but it's still casting a natural shadow on his face, and it does darken those eyes a lot better than some of those early images. The head sculpt, like I said, is just fantastic on this. I think capturing all the true nuances that the original 78 mask had, right down to the idea of ripping off those sideburns of the initial William Shatner Captain Kirk mask. That's the case on actually both sides. The one thing that this mask doesn't actually have, though, is the little hole on the side of his neck, of course, where the crocheting needle gets stabbed in there by Laurie. It's not there at all. So I really want to feel like this is Michael Myers before he starts killing and hunting down Laurie specifically. One thing I do really like about this particular head sculpt is the paintwork that they added to it, and I'm really hoping the camera's able to capture all of that. Got this slightly dark shadowing along the top area of his head, and as you would hope to find, the more natural flesh tones starting to be revealed at the bottom of his mask. Like in the movie as well, if you flip the figure around, he does have that open seam at the back, where you could imagine, if you wanted, that he could take the mask off in its entirety. But I definitely do feel like the mask and the figure itself looks much better when you physically get this in hand. The hardest part, again, when you see these things online, it's all a matter of how the person took the photo. In the case of seeing too much of the eyes of Michael Myers, yeah, the eyes are in there, and you can see they've been sculpted in there as well, quite decently, but you really don't, for me at least, want to have a Michael Myers where his eyes are really standout roles. In this case, actually, even like the eyes are further up on the openings of his mask, so you barely even see that they're there. You really don't want direct light shining on him, because that would defeat, I feel, the purpose completely. Definitely, though, one of my favorite things about the figure is the paintwork that they did to the surface of the mask. Now, I can actually even just take the mask off completely if you wanted to see how it was attached in place. A rather large-looking ball joint and an equally large ball socket on the interior of the mask. And this is all dense plastic. There's very little give to the mask itself. You can see what the head looks like in hand. Now, some would say this would have looked good as rooted hair. Rooted hair could work well as a Michael Myers mask, but I feel like sometimes rooted hair can also take away from a mask. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that they went the route of plastic, especially when it comes to his notable curls on the sides that he has in the film. I feel it works much better in plastic, but it's not to say that it wouldn't have worked in real, actual flocked hair. But going plastic with the hair also does keep the cost down on the figure, and I can certainly understand when it comes to mass producing these, why they went the route of plastic hair instead. But the plastic hair works just as well, if you ask me. If you look at the closer details there, all the little pock marks, and the way that the actual real latex mask would have actually produced these little pock marks, these little spots and imperfections, have also been captured here perfectly by Trick or Treat Studios. Let's go ahead and just put Michael Myers' head back onto his head sculpt here. But yeah, it is using a much larger ball joint. But just before I do that, actually, I want to show you guys the neck itself. One of the things that people have also asked about is, how does the body look? I mean, do they use like a regular standard body? And they do, but it does make use of a darker coloring of plastic that they used instead of a lighter plastic. So I like that they went a darker route. Anyways, though, let's go ahead and put the head sculpt back onto his neck here. We'll just push it down. Here we go. We'll look at the articulation, of course, on this figure in a second. One of the other things we can talk about, of course, is his coveralls or boilers that he features in the film. A debatable topic, of course, with collectors as to what color the costume actually is. Some would say it's a greenish gray. Some would others just say it's a blue-based gray. Some would say it's closer to being a blue. Well, this one actually has slight tints of gray, but the majority of it seems like it's a really dark-based blue. The stitch lines, as you can see around the pockets, for example, are a lighter shade of that blue, almost borderlining navy. He does actually have a zip up, so you can unzip this completely if you wanted to, revealing underneath not only a rather muscular looking build for Myers, but also a black t-shirt that he's sporting underneath. Other questions I'm sure collectors would be having is whether the collar can be lifted, and yes, it is a separate piece from the rest of his coveralls. If you wanted to, not probably that you would want to be displaying Michael Myers like this, but yes, you can bring and lift the collar up. It has not been sewn to the rest of his costume. We'll just fold this right down here. The rest of the costume, as you can see, he does have the little snaps there on the tops of his collar. He does actually have the snaps lower on his sleeves as well, where there's some decent stitch work that they put to the bottom of the sleeve. Now, the body itself for Michael Myers is notably thinner. It's thinner in the arms, and it's thinner in the torso, and it's certainly thinner in the legs. And I don't feel it's too detracting either. The size of the costume that they actually gave him gives him, I feel, a natural, larger body. That I don't feel it's detracting at all, the fact that he's got a smaller frame underneath all that. I mean, as you can see, like, the boilers do give him the necessary baggage that I feel like he should have. If they had made the body slightly bigger, I feel like it wouldn't have the natural drape that I feel like it has in the film itself. One other thing we can, of course, talk about is Michael Myers' hands. Now, I think when we did see initial images of this guy, he didn't have as much the spot work done to the plastic on his hands. As you can see, it does look like Trick or Treat later went back and added some additional freckles and like imperfections to his hand, as you can see right there, the fingernails. Now, again, these are the more broader dynamic hands. Again, he only has the one gripping hand. Let me just show you how that changes out. I'm going to lift this sleeve, just going to wiggle this off the peg joint. He unfortunately only also has one hand, so it only goes on this one side if you want to display him with the knife. I'm going to go ahead and replace the hand, just wiggle this back into place, just like that. One thing I also do really like is that they use the same similar color of peg joint that they use for the arms, and they also use for the hands, so it's consistent. It's not the case where if you lift the sleeve up too quickly, you'll see there's a different color of plastic underneath. We'll just wiggle that back in place. But I do like the consistency, the fact that the color stays relatively the same. It would be a shame if this was a lighter color to the hand, and that's definitely not the case here with Michael Myers. The last thing we, of course, can tackle is his boots. Now, the boots themselves, he does have like these military boots in the film with notable areas of green here. I don't know if you can actually see it or not, but there is a greenish tint to the boot itself. It's not completely all this black color. I did feel like the boot was a little on the long side from heel to the end of the toe. And I'm wondering if the reasoning why they did that is so that when the pants drape over top of it, you still see enough visible foot that's sticking out from the bottom of it. It really does have some nice detailing done to the foot itself. Some slight discoloration. It looks like they speckled on there. Maybe a darker shade of green. They also have done that on the undersole of the figure's boot as well. I do think that the boots are pretty good, actually. And a nice touch to detail is the fact that they added that little bit of green from the top area here to the bottom of the area of where the laces are, similar to what he has in the film. just a few last touches we'll have a look at before we tackle the figure's articulation, one of which being his zipper. Sometimes 6-scale companies tend to overlook the fact that zippers have to still be scaled with the rest of the costume. And in this case, I'm glad that Trick or Treat used a really small, sized appropriately zipper for the rest of his coveralls. I mean, really, one thing I also wanted to mention that I didn't tackle too much yet in this review is the quality and seam work that they put into the coveralls themselves. Like, these are decent quality coveralls, right down to the fact that he's actually got snaps. And even if you look at the way it's been seamed around the end of his sleeve, a little angled seam line right there and seaming up the middle. I mean, that's good quality coveralls that they put in there. Right down to the fact he's actually got functioning pockets. If you can believe it, he does have functioning pockets. You could put stuff in there if you wanted to, like little matches, for example. This side, of course, does have the flap that drapes over top of it. And he does have functioning pockets here as well, and also on the back of his coveralls. Here's where the elasticized waist is, as you can see, been stitched in place using the same coloring and threading. But again, I really am happy with, I'm impressed really with the type of coverall that they use. Like, it does have a real natural drape to it. And again, if one of your big worries about the figure was the fact that he's using too small of a frame, I think because of the way the coveralls are, because it's a good quality coverall, I feel like, again, it sits and drapes on his body, giving him about the same frame that he has in the movie. I think if you used too large of a body frame underneath that, it would almost make him look a little too big, a little too muscular. You want to have a thinner frame on him. It's not to say he doesn't have muscles, like he does have biceps here, for example, underneath the sleeves, but I do feel like it drapes naturally the way it does in the film. So that sort of works hand in hand, I feel, with the fact that they'd use a slightly thinner build on this guy. I mean, there's his legs right there, for example. Having a look at the figure's articulation, though, quickly one last time looking at that head sculpt. That is fantastic work. But the head is on that ball joint that we already discussed before. Because of that, the head does tilt up. It does tilt down. You can also rock it back and forth if you want to give that classic look that he has when he, of course, shoves the knife through Bob. I really regret now, I'm sure he was really regretting getting that beer, but you can pull that off quite effectively. Sometimes when you are rotating the head back and forth, the head does sometimes free itself from the ball joint, but again, it's very easy just to snap that back into place. Oh, such a good head sculpt. The arms hinge out. Now, I only seem to be able to get the arms sitting at around a 45-degree angle bend. I don't think I'd want to be having him doing jumping jacks. So the idea of only being able to get a 45-degree angle bend is fine for me, at least when it comes to moving his arms. Speaking of which, the arms do move forward. They also do move back. It gets a little tight here just because of the way it's been seamed underneath his armpit. But again, you can get somewhat of a full bend forward, and the same can be said for the back. He does have a swivel at the bicep. Does have a hinge in the elbow. Actually, the forearm is the thing that's really rotating. It's not the bicep itself. The bicep is part of his shoulder. It's down here in the forearm that's actually moving back and forth. He has a single hinge on the elbow, and then his hand, whatever hand you decide to display him with, does rotate back and forth and does also rock back and forth this way. For the upper torso, he does have a ball joint, so you get a full range of motion going there. He does have a waist swivel. I have noticed, like right here in his lower stomach area, there's a slightly more softer feel. I'm wondering if they actually have just used a slight more padded body underneath. It's not padded in the sense that it's padded with like batting or anything like that, but it does have a slightly more softer feel. Like it's probably a body that has some rubbery material to it as well. Like there's some, like I said, there's a little more pliableness right here. Anyways, for his legs do a full split. Well, somewhat a full split. You're not going to be doing that with Michael Myers anytime soon. He does have a swivel, roughly about a 3/4 cut swivel on the top of his thigh. He has a double hinge on his knee. And then when it comes to his boots, like again, he does have the hinge up and down. You can rotate the boots all the way around, and you can rock them back and forth. What a stellar looking Michael Myers. And I'm really hoping as well, like reviews like this, the reviews that you guys see online, can sort of be the thing that decides for you whether this is a line that you want to jump on board. I went into the idea of picking up this one and pre-ordering this one because I was such a big fan of Michael Myers and really wasn't sure what I would expect to get from Trick or Treat Studios. But as you can see, and hopefully have seen in this video, what we get is a stellar looking Myers all around. You know, it's funny, when I got this guy home, I was sitting in my office, I was doing some work, and I took him out of the packaging, and I was so impressed with how good of a job Trick or Treat Studios did on the head sculpt on this guy that I immediately just took some very, very crude photos of him, and I posted it immediately on Facebook and Twitter, sharing how excited I was to finally get this guy in hand. And hopefully, in a review like this, has been able to nudge people that were on the fence. I know there were some that were like, I'm not sure if I want to get on board the Trick or Treat line of Michael Myers. I mean, how good does this guy look in hand? Well, again, I'm hoping a review like this has been that necessary sway in the right direction of picking this guy for yourself. Because, again, and this is the thing, again, that is mind-blowing about this, is that this figure cost $120. You can check around on various online sites right now, and this guy pre-orders for about $119 to $120. And again, when you see this guy in hand for $120 is an absolute steal. Granted, yes, he doesn't come with many accessories. He only comes really the one knife, and he only comes with a hand. But if Trick or Treat Studios is watching this video, I'm not really sure that they are or not. I mean, I definitely feel there's a big opportunity here to release accessory packs for these figures down the road. Release these guys as is, keep the price point at a really affordable $120, but then down the road release like a Michael Myers accessory set, come include with a pumpkin, the tombstone, a display stand. Stuff like that will, I think, really be where this line flourishes, because collectors will pick up the initial figure, love it the way that I'm loving it, and then be able then to jump onto their site and pick up a Michael Myers 78 accessory set, Michael Myers tombstone set, stuff like that. I think would just be the icing on this cake. It's a great looking figure, and things that I've heard from people have been like, I'm not sure about that head sculpt. How good does it look? Well, we did see some early images where I felt people were taking the figure's picture with too bright of a light. The key, though, with Michael Myers of always being scary is the fact that you don't seldom see his eyes. You really need that natural shadow resting on his face. And taking a photo with such bright exposure really does take away and diminish a bit the head sculpt that they put into this piece. The other concern was, of course, being that they used a smaller frame on his body. And again, I just want to reinstate the fact they did use a smaller frame, but I think that benefits the figure because the way his coveralls sit then on his body. The coveralls are slightly bigger as they were in the film, and I feel like you get a better drape on the figure by using a smaller frame. And again, I hope this review has been somewhat of a reassurance to people that were sort of on the fence. I've heard many people like, I don't know if I really want to get this guy. I really want to see what he physically looks like in hand. And that's one of the reasonings why I try to do my best to really showcase as much as I could about this figure. Because I'm telling you right now, this figure is going to sell out, and unless Trick or Treat Studios decides to re-release this guy, $120, this guy would be gone in record time. Definitely, if you're a big fan of Halloween, I would highly, highly recommend you pick this one up and adding it to your collection at especially $120. It's absolutely crazy what they're selling this guy for. If you have picked up this figure or you've pre-ordered this figure, let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of it. Or based on this review and this review alone, would you want to pick up the Trick or Treat Studios 78 Michael Myers? I did say this on Twitter and Facebook. Based on this figure, I do feel the Halloween property is in the right hands with Trick or Treat Studios, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to be doing with a Halloween 4, Halloween 5, and a 2018 Michael Myers, which I think are the only ones that we've seen images so far of. But hopefully we'll still get ourselves like a 2, a 6. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing a 6. And, you know, of all things, I'm sort of anxious to see an H2O Michael Myers because it's one of my favorite looks for the character. Don't shame me. If you guys are fans of this channel, or maybe you're new to this channel, liking the content you guys are seeing, consider the idea, if you haven't done so already, to hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And, of course, keep your peepers peeled because there's definitely going to be a lot of videos coming your way. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.